Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Lone Oak Farms for another episode. This episode here will be hopefully completing our chemical application, or fertilizer rather, on the grass. And you'll see now I've advanced time and it's at its full maturity. So we're going to hit these fields one more time with another shot of fertilizer to hopefully get the best possible result that we can. And I think, like I explained in the last video, in real life, this application of fertilizer here probably would have been put on last fall and would have overwintered, kind of stimulated it into the fall, if you will. We have to put it on here to kind of satisfy the game engine here. Did I get all that set up right? Let me see. Next closest, let's go to first. Let's see, will you drive the course? I can't even see. Hold on a minute here. Something tells me I didn't set this up right. I thought I had it set up on field 35 to begin right over here, but I might have messed that up while I was attempting to talk. So, actually, let me make sure no other, 'cause I think I have, yeah, fertilizing, seeding, no other courses loaded. 35. Oh, how did I get that? Last used. I don't want that one. I want it to be current vehicle position. That's what I had set up wrong. So let me give that another try. There we go. I was kind of expecting to see that out there. Me and Courseplay kind of have a love-hate relationship. I really appreciate it for what it's to do, but can't always just get it to bow to my will the way I'd like it to. There it's swinging a little bit wide, which probably means it isn't fertilized over on this other side here, but that's all right. I can't apologize for my abysmal frame rate. I think it's because of some other things I have loaded at the moment, and maybe to terminate those so we can get on with the game, I'll go show you these pictures, and we'll let them continue fertilizing, and maybe by the time we get back in here, we're done. We only need to fertilize 2 fields here, and then we'll be fast forwarding, I think, tonight, where we will start knocking it down. So let's get out of the game just for a moment. Hopefully we don't crash all this, and I'll show you some pictures. So this is the lone oak tree is right up here. The house for the Lone Oak Farms is sitting right here off frame. I don't know if in the game they have a fence here anymore. It may not be there. And for a while they had an arborvitae hedge around it. Maybe that isn't there anymore. I don't recall. But you see right here a John Deere windrower in the field. And what one of my uncles, I think, was doing is he was making an opening cut. And you'll notice it's still daylight, or it's definitely headed towards dusk, west being this way over here, the sun is setting. While it was daylight, a lot of times they would make an opening cut in the field while they could see what they were doing, because the rest of the night was going to be spent in virtually pitch black. Not totally pitch black. You can see it as lights on here. You can see kind of where you're going. But they wanted to at least establish kind of where the various lands were, if you will, where they would have a combine. So there'd be a combine in this land here, this big old area. There'd probably be another one over here. And they would help each other occasionally, but they had, I believe, at the time, 3 machines. So to kind of keep them out of each other's way, or to be somewhat efficient in how they had the field laid out, they would do kind of an opening cut, kind of like you see here. So nothing fancy, but this also shows kind of what a ripe, fine fescue looks like when it's ready to be cut. This isn't totally ripe yet. I don't know what the technical term for it is, but it's time to cut and to lay it down. I mean, it's past the doughy stage, or however they say that about the seed. So it's time to cut and let it dry. And so it would be windrowed during the night here, and would then dry in the sun, hopefully dry, if water came out down when rain, wouldn't be drying, but hopefully would dry over the next week and a half, to 15 days or so before they would bring the combine in. And by that point, all of these little tiny seeds in here would be fully dried and ready for harvest. And then the combine would come through and pick up the windrows. And we're going to try to simulate this in game. I I kind of worked on a mod, and I never really was at liberty to release it. Maybe they wouldn't care now. I kind of built on top of some of the work that some other modders did, and when I asked for permission to release, they had it for, I believe it was for a Kloss combine, and it was to cut grass seed standing. And I made it so any combine could harvest grass seed, and I did it to where you cut it first before you harvest it. And so, oh, actually, you could still cut it standing if you wanted, but we're going to do it the way we did it on the farm. And when I asked for permission to release it, similar to theirs, they declined, even though we were already past Farm 17. So, sometimes that happens, and that's okay. All I know is I enjoyed it quite a lot. So we'll kind of show that in game, kind of how that works. So there's just one picture. That isn't much to look at, but that would have been the opening cut. Let's back up here. I think this is the same machine, if I'm not mistaken. Looks like it. These are just little 2280 John Deere windrowers. Green paint. It was a John Deere farm. And this is one of my uncles in here driving, making the opening round. Here, the hay shed of today would be sitting kind of right out in here in the shop building that everybody sees on the map and knows where that is. It would be sitting right here. But back then, we didn't have any of that, so all of this area was farmed. And speaking of farm, let's go check on our hero and see how he's doing. Like he's on the second round. He's throwing out the pellets like a good feller. We pull off plow. Okay, so he's got a little bit to do. It looks like he's going back and forth. So he'll be working on this field here for a little while. Leave him be. We'll come back to our... Well, I was going to come back to our picture here, but it appears Windows kick me out of it again, so I need to go locate it, and I believe it was in here. So we'll come back to our pick, full screen. This was an opening round, and again, it still looks kind of daylight. I think that's somewhat of a lighting thing, because we'll see in a moment the camera will turn and you'll be looking into a full-on sunset. So I think by now the sun had gone down, and we were starting on the field in earnest, and we would be going basically all night long. This parcel out here, I think, is about 30 acres. I think they figured these machines could do, if they kept them clipping, you could do 4 to 5 acres an hour if you really kept them humming along, all dependent kind of on conditions and how much dew was in the grass. So let me go one more picture. I'm actually in here driving this one. I'm following my uncle, kind of coming behind him. I didn't even know my picture was being taken there. Grandma took these pictures, and I'm kind of glad she did, because there's not that many of them around. And so I'm glad she did, so I can kind of share it with you all here. And by the way, I don't know if it's of interest. Maybe there's some farmer types. Um, there was various ways used to cut the grass, and the one we're going to use in Farming Sim isn't a standard cutting table, kind of like this. This is similar in some regards to what you would see on a combine, right? You got a reel, you have a sickle under here that you can't see because it's on the ground cutting the grass, and you had to have it pretty close to the ground, by the way, because you see how a lot of this grass is laying over, meaning it's heavy with seed and whatnot. So so we were cutting close to the ground, but what we used was a twin knife. It was called a twin knife. There was two sickles in here. I don't know how they kind of worked together, but it was open stubby guards, which wasn't always the best because I think they would let the material in pretty good. If you had guards around your sickle, um, kind of cutting through things, sometimes you could get held up by all that grass. So when it was open, it could come in a little easier. But if you were in rock country, the stubby guards didn't really help you because you were kind of naked and open to rocks, just pummeling your sickle. And yeah, I think, I ran both these 2280s, and the generation before this had they didn't have cabs on it. It was just open air. The John Deere 800 self-propelled windrower. I think I showed a picture of it in another video. Those had guards on the sickle, and they tended to fare better when there was rocks. It tended to bounce over it. You maybe would hit your sickle blade. Many times you wouldn't. You would just bounce, and you'd say, "Whew," and you'd move on. Whereas in these machines, if you hit a rock, odds are you're going to have to stop and get out and fix it. And we tried to help ourselves, with these sickles. They tried various things over the years to see what would be efficient in terms of, if you did have to get out of the cab and go fix something. Years ago, like on those old 800 machines, it was all rivets. So in order to put on a sickle section, you had these little rivets. You would have to hold a piece of steel under it to fix it in the field, and a ball peen hammer to beat on the end of it up top to try to mash the head of the rivets so that you could hold your new sickle section on. It was kind of a pain changing these out in the field, but sometimes that's what we had to do. And only rarely did we really have to pull the whole entire sickle out of the header, to do work on it. We typically did that at least once a day if we were, well, maybe not once a day. Although I think we did try to take it out and examine it more closely before we started cutting for the night. A lot of times we try to sharpen it if we could, to keep it as cutting as well as we could. But a lot of times, those old machines, they might not look as pretty. You might get a little colder at night while operating them, but they did a pretty good job. And where they really shone was when the dew came out. I mean, I cannot believe it. Sometimes they would cut circles around, these more advanced machines. I don't know what it was about it. Maybe it was the guards. I just don't know what it was. But when the dew and the wetness in the grass got heavy in the mornings in particular, it would slow these machines down, and they tended to bog down a bit in their ability to cut. Not so for those old machines. I mean, we kind of joked you could practically put it in road gear and just fly along and make a windrow. You always got to be careful, of course, bumping up the speed because you never know what might be out there that you could hit. But I probably just listening to me, you can tell I have lots of memories. It was a really good time. I enjoyed working in the night. I'm kind of a night owl as it is. Shoot, right now as I record this, it's 10 to 1 in the morning. So I'm still kind of in some of my night owl ways, if you will. Um, so so we would do that at night, generally when the sun went down, clear until the dew came off the grass in the morning. And that could depend. There were nights where there really wasn't any dew, and there were nights where there was plenty of dew, and it would last clear till noon. We tried to be somewhat reasonable with it. If we were about to finish a particular field, cutting it, and we needed to get it done for the schedule, well, we may fudge a little bit. We'd go a little bit longer, just to make sure it got done. Whereas other times, if we finished early for the night or whatever, with whatever parcel we were doing, we'd, knock off early. And a lot of times during harvest, as we got closer to harvest, there's a lot of things happening all at once. We got windrow going on, and right on the heels of that, we're trying to get the whole farm knocked down into windrows. Well, the combines need to be worked on and got ready for harvest. Pretty soon they would be entering the fields, and it was possible at times you would still be windrowing while you were having to combine and harvest. And occasionally still you would be burning fields on the back end that had already been harvested. So so there was a lot of short times of sleep during harvest, and I think any farmer listening to this can easily relate to that. When your entire livelihood is concentrated at a short period of time in the year, you just don't mess around. You do whatever it takes to take care of business, and sleep sometimes is the part you need to give up to take care of all that. But and typically when you started windrowing for the first time, you didn't always know, is this the night that we would do it? And in this field here, I'm assuming by now we'd already gone through several fields. This wasn't the highest elevation, but I think I mentioned in a previous video, one of their lowest elevation fields was called Adam's Bottom. It's kind of a funny sounding name, but it was some low-lying property along a river, and it was the lowest elevation of the entire farm. So for whatever reason, that's kind of where the grass seemed to mature and ripen the quickest. So a lot of times that was one of the first fields that would be windrowed. So since we're up here near the home place on the farm, I'm assuming we've already done that field. We've already laid several others down, so we're kind of in the groove for windrowing season. But I'll tell you, the first night or two could be pretty brutal, because we didn't know. It all depends on how the seed would ripen during the day. And I remember the early years, Grandpa would give us a go ahead as to when we would knock a field down and to whether he felt it was ready. So you may work hard all day doing whatever we were doing on the farm, and then we would learn towards evening, hey, we got to windrow a field tonight. And so then you may spend part of the night, all of the night, still awake and no rest, and continue working, on the windrowing part. During this time of year, of course, I mean, you got to get some sleep. So a lot of times then that would take place during the day, and we'd get up later in the afternoon to service the machines and get them all ready to go again for the next night. These were diesel. I think the old 800 that I ran when I first started up there was a gas machine. And as I recall, it didn't even have enough to go all night long. The tank wasn't big enough. So you had to refill it in the middle of the night. But uh, but these here I think would last out the night. They were they were good machines, I would say, as a general rule. I wouldn't say they were top of the line machines, but the ones they have now are designed totally differently. Like I kind of started saying, this is similar to a cutter platform you would have on a combine, to cut wheat or some other kind of cereal grain with a sickle down there and a reel. And then it has just an auger in here, platform auger to carry to the middle and bunch it into a windrow. Well, the old 800, I think I described this previously in another video, had a belt on there, canvas that would put it in the center versus an auger. But in later years, they've gotten away from the cutter platform. And this is something that just fascinates me. We'll see it kind of with the mod that we use in game, and I maybe have some other pictures I can share at some point of the more recent windrowers that they use. What they have is a massive mower deck here, and there's no sickle anymore and no reel. All there is just like a big lawnmower, if you will, with big blades underneath to cut the grass. And somehow the way the blades are structured, it's able to shoosh it into the middle and still make a windrow. And I've thought about that before. It's like you don't just take a field mower out there and buzz off the grass and chowder it all to pieces. So I don't know how it's set up. What I do know is I think it takes a significant amount of horsepower to run those big blades. And apparently they've done trials with this to help John Deere and some of the other manufacturers to help convince the farmers that this is a way they can go to cut their grass. To where they set up like a trial field, and one windrow would be cut by like a windrower like this with a cutter head, a sickle, and standard equipment, and then the other by this new one that's a glorified mower. And apparently the yield between the two was the same or close enough that they didn't have to, that it was just close enough, and they could deal with whatever small loss that it was in the new one. But it's one of those things that kind of comes full circle in the technology, to where years ago it took a genius to invent the sickle. And there were people who probably would have loved the circular motion, which mimicked the old scythe, the guys had in the field. And I'm talking way long ago, back in the day when they carried a hand scythe out to the field to cut the grain. So the first, looking in the patent office, of first machines to cut things were wheels shaped, wheels with scythes on them, turning in a circle. And probably because, the horses that they used at the time, there just wasn't enough power, to be able to cut out in a field with that until more recently. So it's kind of one of those things technologically that's come full circle. But by going to that newer technology, and I'm sorry I don't have a picture of it up here at the moment, they are able to just fly through the fields. I've heard of speeds north of 10 miles an hour that they can cut the grass and do an even better job than these old sickle bars did. And and there's another advantage too. I'm not sure why this is, but when you cut a windrow and then come in behind with a combine, you have to combine it the same direction that you windrow it. I'm not sure why that is. That just is the way it is. You'd have to literally try it in a combine to know what I'm talking about, but it just doesn't work. If you try to take the windrow backwards, it won't feed into the combine. Yeah, it just doesn't work. So, but if you take it in the same direction the windrower travels, then everything works. But not so with the new style of windrowers. Apparently, you can take it this way or that way. It doesn't matter which direction. You can combine it any way you please. That must be kind of a accidental side benefit, if you will. So, maybe I'll talk about our mod a little bit more for when windrowing that we use when we get to that part. But let me return real quick to the game. I want to see if he's done fertilizing. Oh, look at that. He is. We're going to stop him and start him up. And you know what? Oh my goodness, my frame rate is just abysmal. We'll make do. I've often said I'm very willing to put up with a low frame rate if the view that I have in game is better. And I think this is testing me on that. I think the frame rate is a little low for my taste, but probably just means I need to do a reboot. Clear out the clutter. So I'm going to get Petey Boy, or whatever his name is, started over here on... Whoops, am I going too far? I guess I gotta be closer to the house. Not sure where in here, but kind of like the last time, we'll set up a course and get him on his merry way. This is field 44. Current position. I think that'll all work. And let's make sure he starts the first waypoint. Yep. I don't totally have him lined up, but I think you'll find it. Let me look and see how good of a job he did on this other field. Well, I think that'll be good enough for government work. That doesn't mess with my OCD too much. Most of this, I mean, it's all pixels, right? So how would we know if it's totally lined up or what have you? It's close enough. And again, we wouldn't do this in real life because by this point, if it's a harvestable grass, we could potentially be damaging the grass. You know what? As I look across this field, there's one thing here that bugs me a little bit. And I think this is something I was asked to do because we were on a server. And it was to bring back all the flowers in the grass. I think the way Bullet Bill had it set up, he took all the flowers and all this, this colored stuff that you see here out of the grass. And I tend to like it better that way also. I don't have anything against flowers, but I do have something against them being in my field. So I realize it's just a coloration thing. So maybe in another video or something, I will go remove that out, maybe after we're done recording this one here, so we can have a pristine field of grass with no appearance of apparent weeds in there, because no weeds allowed. We're better farmers than that. And I think all that's going on here is the grass used by the grass seed mod is basically just using the grass that the Giants have built into the game. So the Giants, I think, intended it to be more of a meadow type grass or what have you, so it has, that additional coloration in there. I'm going to take that out now that I see that here again. You don't see it at the lower growth stages, but you definitely see it here. And I had at some level, wondered if instead of using the Giants grass, maybe I should have installed just a flat out a new crop, called it fescue or tall fescue or something, versus using the grass. Because once you have the mod in, well, then you can harvest grass anywhere on the map. If it appears in a ditch, you can run in there with a combine and you can combine the grass in the ditch. Well, you would never do that in real life, of course. So we're not going to do it in here. But I think if we set up grass seed as its own distinct crop, then it would be confined to fields at least. And people wouldn't accidentally, I say accidentally or deliberately, harvest it elsewhere, which wouldn't be realistic. I know I've mentioned I've had this map on a server. This was one of the compromises I had to make, putting in these flowers and whatnot. But another thing I know, one of my playing partners, he would literally do that. He would go, if he wanted some extra money, is he would go combine the ditchways. It's like, my goodness, you would never do that in real life. And, in game, I kind of set up the economics so you would earn a little bit more than you would, say, from wheat or whatever. So that's the reason kind of why he would do it. But whatever, it's all a game world, right? All for fun. Let me switch back. Actually, let me save it just to be safe as he continues on. I'll go back to our pictures once more, which are probably tanked. Yes, they are. Let me expand this. Just one other picture I have, and this is still all on the opening round. That's why I say it's kind of a trick of lighting here. It's all the same. Of course, this picture was taken kind of into a sunset. You can see the sunset has set for the day, and we're looking forward to a long night. I'm sure we knocked down this field here, front of the house, and then we knocked down the entire field and back of the house, which would have been, oh, I think that's 120 acres back there, maybe, or maybe it's 160. This one up here would have been 30, so we had a night coming ahead of us, and then who knows where we went after that, to continue knocking the property down. This was a more recent, I think this was a 3830 windrower. That's another one of my uncles that's in there. Same size of header. I think at the time it's pretty small, when you think of it. I think this was a 12-foot header. Nowadays, I think they're up to at least 14 or 16. And I know that seems pitifully small, probably, to a lot of farmers here, but the limitation you have is when you take your combine in to harvest this and you have this thick foliage of grass to take through the combine, either conventional threshing or rotors, one of the two. And so your combine needs to be able to deal with it and still keep moving. So, when we got to combining, I seem to recall the standard speed was somewhere between 3 and 3.5 miles per hour. Dealing with these, and this is in a larger modern combine. I think they had an 8820 back when I was on the farm. That's old technology now, but it would go 3 to 3.5 miles an hour. It was enough capacity to handle it. But they also had some smaller machines that would go 2 to 2.5 miles an hour. So we're talking moving pretty slow through the fields, even handling only a 12-foot swath. So if it was much bigger, I mean, you would just have to go all the slower with your combines in the field. So as that's improved over time, of course, they've been able to widen it a little bit, but not by as much as you might think. It all is going to depend too on conditions, um, and the variety of the grass. Uh, that maybe we can comment on that more when we get into the harvest videos. But the speed with which you were able to harvest was greatly dictated not only by conditions but also the type of seed that you were harvesting. So maybe we'll go back to our game here. Our friend is still trying to get the crop fertilized. But as I look at the clock here, it seems like another half hour has gone by so quickly. So I think what I'll do is quit boring everybody. I'll finish this field off camera, and we'll hopefully get close to getting ready to windrow in the next video. Thank you all for watching. Hope I haven't bored anybody. Have a wonderful day, night, week, whatever it is where you're at, and I'll talk to you the next time soon. Take care.